on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
Good morning, welcome to live coverage of qualifying ahead at the Chinese Grand Prix, the 5th round on the 2024 calendar. We've got the sprint part of the weekend out of the way. Now it's full attention to all things Grand Prix and who will start on pole position. Qualifying underway in just a few moments' time. If you haven't managed to catch the sprint results yet, then spoiler alert, Max Verstappen took the win. Having started 4th, he ended up 13 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, and Sergio Perez rounded out the top 3. But now to guide you through qualifying for the race, alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, is McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird and BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Sam, 19 racing laps completed this morning. What will the drivers have learned that could help them in qualifying? Because it is a sprint weekend. A reminder, they've technically only had one practice session.
And to be honest, we could have turned that into like a Benson's long corner, to be honest. Yeah. Because what we learned is that the medium compound tyre can do 19 laps, especially on a Red Bull. Max Verstappen was on a used set of mediums and was still lapping 1 to 1.5 seconds quicker than everybody else at the end of the sprint. Carlos Sainz, I think it was George Russell and a couple of others used new, and they were starting to run out of rubber at the end.
Andrew, we come to you when we want positivity and optimism. Can anybody challenge Max Verstappen when it comes to the fight for pole this afternoon?
Well, pole, I actually don't know the answer to that question. I think there could be, we don't know. That's the thing. Qualifying was wet. We had a first practice session on Friday morning that told us absolutely nothing about relative pace. In race pace, it was very clear that Verstappen, over a race run, long run corner as you like to call it, was in an absolute different stratosphere from everyone else, including his teammate. But that's not the same as on one lap. It took him a little while to get up to speed in the race. Okay, he was being careful with his tyres, but we know the Red Bull is careful with its tyres generally. That's part of its design, that's part of its strength over a Grand Prix distance. It's its weakness in qualifying. It's such a good car that it's usually still quick enough in Verstappen's hands to be on pole. But we actually do not know, unlike going into a race where we pretty much know that Verstappen's going to win, we actually do not know what's going to be the fastest car driver combination today. Is it Verstappen and Red Bull? Is it Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, for example? He looked very quick on Friday. I suspect the Ferrari is probably the only car that could challenge the Red Bull, but I wouldn't be surprised if it actually did.
But that's what we like, isn't it, Sam, about these sprint weekends, is it reduces the amount of practice. So regardless of whether it rains or not, to upset the one remaining practice session or qualifying, whatever it may be for the sprint, we get this step into the unknown every time. Everybody is on the back foot.
Yeah, it reduces the amount of practice, which kind of puts the teams in a little bit of jeopardy. What it also does is mean that when they do have a free practice session, everybody's wanting to be out on track, which is great for the fans at trackside. So I think that's what Stefano Domenicali wants. He wants, when there's time on track, he wants more action, more cars out there doing more laps.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want sessions where no cars go out on track and it's just empty tarmac. This is how the standings look after the sprint race. A reminder, the top 8 for the sprint race received points, 8 going to the winner, 1 going to 8th place, and collecting those 8 was Max Verstappen, who now has 85 points at the top of the standings. Sergio Perez is his next closest rival with 70. Then it's Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, the top 5 in the drivers. Over in the constructors with 155 points to their name, it's Red Bull Racing in front of Ferrari, who have 129. Then it's McLaren, Mercedes and Aston Martin, the top 5. RB still leading the way in that battle in the second half of the field in front of Haas, yet to get off the mark. Williams, Sauber and Alpine, the top 10. And actually, could, Sam, a team like Sauber spring a bit of a surprise? Yes, it was mixed conditions in the sprint qualifying, but they got both cars into the top 10. Both drivers have actually been saying, well, our one lap pace isn't too bad. Bottas expected to get a top 10 finish last time out in Japan, were it not for their Sauber pit stop issues that they're currently experiencing. Here's Albon first on the radio.
What's ruling here, because Kevin's clearly about to go, and we came up the pits before he did.
if we were there first, then we're ahead in the queue. So it should be your position, but just caution, make sure he doesn't force his way out.
That was Alex Albon on the radio to his Williams engineer, just asking for clarification as to how much he could get in front of Kevin Magnussen, who is, along with his Haas teammate, edged out into the fast lane. And in seeing if he can get in front of him, the Haas of Hulkenberg decided to overtake everybody in the fast lane. Magnussen does slot in behind Albon, who goes through. As qualifying Q1 gets underway, 18 minutes down to 17 and a half. In that scramble for the lower half in the field especially, could a team like Sauber, seeming a little bit stronger this weekend perhaps?
I think Sauber have got a decent chance of getting especially one car, Valtteri Bottas, through to Q3. Joe, spurred on by his adoring local fans, he's desperately going to want to have a great day today, a good weekend even. They have looked better here than they've looked all year. So let's see what happens. I'm predicting Valtteri Bottas through to Q3.
Okay, a prediction there. We'll hold you to that one. Zhou Guanyu out on track then in that fluoro green Sauber. His first time racing around the Shanghai International Course. He was actually here in the first ever Chinese Grand Prix in the grandstands, holding a Renault Fernando Alonso flag at the age of 4, and now back here in 2024 as a part of the 20 drivers that make up the Formula One grid. Underway then, 16 minutes and 21 seconds. It's not a mad rush out of the pits for the likes of Fernando Alonso, staying put for the time being. Out on track, everybody on the soft compounder tyre, with the exception of Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, who's actually gone out on the medium compounder tyre. But the usual runners going through on the soft. Hulkenberg, Magnussen are the two Haas cars. Ocon, Albon, Joe, Tsunoda, Sargent, Russell and Gasly, the cars out on track at the moment as they begin to get heat into these tyres and get back up to grips with this just over 5.4 kilometre, 3.3 mile track, 16 turns, 7 to the right, 7 to the left, I should say, 9 to the right. And you've got, Sam, as well, that really long back straight, around about 1.4 kilometres as well. So I imagine it's quite important around turn 13 to make sure you get as good a run as possible and carry as much speed down that back straight.
Yeah, it is. We've just seen the Sauber, of Joe doing quite a lot of weaving and moving down the straight. I think that's because the straight is so long. You don't want to lose that external tyre temperature before braking into the hairpin. That's towards the end of the lap. He wants to start the lap with the tyres in the best possible shape. He's coming through turn 2 now. This isn't going to be his fastest lap of the qualifying session, but he's definitely going to want to put a marker down early on.
Joe then making his way through Sector 1. He's been out-qualified by his teammate Valtteri Bottas at the last 8 races in a row. Has the longest current run of consecutive Q1 eliminations. 7 times in a row he's been knocked out in this part, although he did make it through to the final part of sprint qualifying yesterday. This is the sound on board the Chinese driver as he makes his way through the right-hander of turn 8, through then turn 9 as you start to go back on yourself, struggling a little bit to keep that Sauber within the tarmac as he now brakes for turn 11, the left-hander, which brings you round the long sweeping right-hander of turn 13 and on to that 1.4 kilometre back straight. The DRS line will wait for him with the rear wing slot opens up and makes his way towards the chicane, the hairpin of turn 14.
Looks a little bit late getting back to power into turn 10. Also, the car looks very stiff through turn 8. There's a bump mid to exit turn 8 with the front of the car bouncing around. He just then skated as he comes back into the pits. I think he's given up on this lap. Maybe this was just a sighter. I'm not sure on the tyre allocation, Harry. Was he on a brand new set of soft?
I believe he was, according to the timing screen in front of me. But you're right about the stiffness as well. And coming through the left-hander of turn 9 just looked like he really struggled to get that car turned in. First laps coming in then as Yuki Tsunoda in the RB report reports on the radio that his DRS isn't working. Kevin Magnussen currently is the fastest time, a 1:36.6. We're about to see what Carlos Sainz has got. He's actually on the medium compound of tyre, a 1:36.9, puts him third fastest at the moment. George Russell, fastest of anybody in the first sector, completes his lap and goes almost 2 tenths clear at the top. Lando Norris also finding time on his first flying lap as well. Personal best for him in sector 1 and sector 2 as he makes his way down onto the back straight. Leclerc starting his first flying lap, making his way through the first sector as well.
Surprised by George Russell. I thought that Mercedes might be a little bit more competitive than that. I don't think that we're near the times that we need yet to get through.
Mercedes looked really slow yesterday, Sam. I have to say, Hamilton only just got into Q3 in 9th place. Russell didn't get through at all. This is when it was still dry. So Russell's only 10th ahead of Kevin Magnussen's Haas, and that's about where a couple of tenths. Sorry, and that's about where Mercedes looked to be yesterday.
Well, Lando Norris goes second behind Russell on his first flying lap, and this a track that McLaren weren't really looking forward to with the long mid-speed corners. We're just being shown a replay as well of Logan Sargent coming through turns 7 and 8, all crossed up, bit of traffic to his inside as well, has to run off the track on the exit of turn 9 on his first flying lap. Sargent then a little bit further down the order. Reminder, we will eliminate the bottom 5 drivers. The slowest 5 will be eliminated come the end of the next 11 minutes and 40 seconds as Max Verstappen, already a winner this weekend in the sprint race, embarks on his first flying lap, looking for his 5th pole this season. 5 from 5. Leclerc goes fastest with a 1:35.9, almost half a second clear of George Russell. Still waiting on lap times for the likes of Stroll, Piastri, Perez, Albon, Bottas, Joe, Sargent, Hamilton out there as well. He's just coming into the middle sector now, as is Fernando Alonso, who's found time. Fastest of anybody in the first sector is Fernando Alonso, looking quick and coming off to finish his final sector now. We'll see what the Aston Martin driver has when he comes across the line. It's looking very quick actually from Fernando Alonso, enough to go P1 once he crosses the line. He does indeed do so. Alonso to the top of the timings. Verstappen makes his way round the right-hander of turns 12 and 13, almost a double long right-hander which curves round and places you onto that back straight. Valtteri Bottas puts his Sauber in contention, a 1:35.5 to go second fastest. Still Piastri out there, he's on an outlap at the moment in his McLaren. We'll see what he's got. His teammate was only good enough for 6th. Verstappen looking good. Perez coming through the middle sector but has had a poor moment. I wonder if he's made a mistake because he's fallen right off the pace in that middle sector. Daniel Ricciardo looking quick as well, slightly revitalised this weekend with a new chassis on his RB. Verstappen crosses the line, fastest of anybody in the final sector, not fastest overall though, slots in behind Alonso into second. 10 minutes to go then as we figure out who can make their way through into the next part of qualifying.
Valtteri Bottas up to P3. So
good lap.
There we go. He's definitely on form this weekend, Valtteri Bottas. We're now watching a replay of Perez.
What the was that? What was he doing there? Goodness knows.
And that was the mistake from Perez really early on, coming into turn 1, and just was met with traffic from the Williams in front of Alex Albon.
I got out his way as much as I could. There was no way I could have got out the way more.
I would agree with Alex Albon on that. I mean, he was way off the racing line. It's up to Sergio Perez to do the normal racing line, and he's made a mistake. Us racing drivers, we do that. If we catch traffic and it's off the racing line and we still make a mistake, we tend to blame the traffic. That's part and parcel of what we do.
Straight out of the driver's excuses book there. Stroll just had a bit of a moment as well, going deep into the hairpin. He's 4th fastest at the moment, 7/10 slower than his teammate Fernando Alonso, who's currently fastest. A reminder, in this Q1 session, with just over 8.5 minutes to go, we're looking to eliminate everybody from 16th down to 20th. Those who cannot make their way through to the top 15 will be eliminated as we set the grid for Sunday's Chinese Grand Prix, the first since 2019. Piastri out there at the moment in his McLaren is currently in that elimination zone, but he hasn't got a proper time on the board yet. He's fastest of anybody in the first sector. Albon as well, coming into the final sector as well, looking decent in his Williams, not challenging for the higher places as it currently stands, but Piastri is on a brilliant lap. Hulkenberg goes 15th. He's on the bubble at the moment, just in front of Ocon, and Tsunoda down in 17th. The Japanese driver has been having a tough weekend so far in that RB and hasn't been able to get on pace with his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. It's roles reversed this time at the RB team. Albon will cut across the line before Piastri does. Leclerc goes fourth fastest. Albon does displace Leclerc and goes fourth fastest. Found a good chunk of time there, did Albon, in the final sector, but Piastri is the one to watch, who looks like he is threatening to go P1, and indeed he does so. With 7.5 minutes left to go, a 10th clear, Piastri at the top from Alonso, Verstappen, Bottas, Albon the top 5, Leclerc, Stroll, Hulkenberg up to 8th in front of Joe, Sargent the top 10, Ricciardo, Russell, Norris, Hamilton and Magnussen in 15th. At risk of elimination then is Gasly, Sainz. That's the sound you're hearing as we ride on board with the Spaniard, who's on the medium compounder tyre, or started qualifying on the medium compounder tyre, now switched on to that soft compounder tyre. He's 17th, then comes Ocon, Tsunoda in 19th, who's saying his DRS is not working, so that might well explain why he's all the way down in 19th. And Sergio Perez still with no time on the board after that incident with Alex Albon, both running wide in turn 1. He's actually in the pits at the moment, so a time for Perez needed to get himself through as well. But Sainz looking quick, fastest of anybody in the middle sector.
Car looks really nicely balanced actually over the bumpy section through turn 8 especially. Sainz's Ferrari looks hooked up as he negotiates the second last corner. He's gone green in sector 1, purple in sector 2, throws it into the last corner, takes all the curb, comes to the line and slots in just ahead of Oscar Piastri in P1.
Less than half a tenth between Sainz and Piastri in these early stages of Q1. Ricciardo down in 16th now, at risk of elimination. So is Lando Norris on an outlap. Lewis Hamilton also at risk. He's still in the pits. He'll need to go again. So will Kevin Magnussen down in 19th. So will Sergio Perez, who had his lap time deleted and another faster lap time interrupted by traffic. He's now back out on the track, having come into the pits.
So at this point, we've got just under 6 minutes to go. I would say that everybody from Bottas down, so that's from 5th place down to last, 20th, which is at the moment Perez, who hasn't completed the lap. Everybody's going to need to go again, because I think that the track is just ramping up and getting faster and faster. Sainz, Piastri, Alonso, Verstappen, I would say are safe, but everybody else will be out there now trying to secure their place for Q2.
Will it be a bit last over the line in terms of track evolution?
It could be. Yeah, it could be, absolutely.
Well, 5 minutes left to run here. Majority of cars in the pit lane. Sainz is out there along with Ocon, Tsunoda and Gasly. Tsunoda actually found time. I wonder if they fixed that DRS issue for the Japanese driver. He's got himself up into 11, just in front of Gasly. Norris needs to go again, and he is indeed doing so, making his way out through turns 2 and 3. Gets a slight snap on the steering wheel as the rear kicks out over the crest of turn 5. The slight right-hander before you come into the braking zone of the right-hander of turn 6. Got embroiled in a lap 1 incident there last time we raced in China in 2019. The two McLarens and the Toro Rosso of Daniel Kvyat coming to blows on that occasion. Next up, through the long sweeping left and right handers of turn 7 and 8 before it all starts to tighten up, and Concertina through almost the U-bend of 9 and 10 before a short blast down to the left-hander of turn 11. He is almost 9/10 up on Logan Sargent's time. That's to get through into the top 15. So finding time is Norris here, out there on the soft compound of tyre, and looking like he's hooking things up nicely at a track where Andrea Stella, the team principal, the drivers themselves are playing down their chances of a good result just due to McLaren's lack of pace when it comes to long mid corners that a lot of them make up this Shanghai International Circuit. A great sprint qualifying yesterday, mixed conditions, saw him start from pole position, was edged out wide in turn 1 by Lewis Hamilton, fell down the field. But what is it going to be this time in these early stages in qualifying? He goes to the top, 10th and a half clear. Lando Norris ahead of Sainz, Piastri, Alonso, Verstappen the top 5.
But the drivers are really earning their money this weekend, because when you watched that lap on board with Lando Norris, it didn't look like a particularly clean lap. I mean, you saw the rear tyre complaining through turn 1. That put him offline to go into turn 2. He was offline exiting 8 and into 9. So it's difficult for them out there. The grip available this weekend is so low, as we see Perez also running deep and wide into turn 14. The drivers aren't having it their own way due to the lack of grip that they've got out there.
Perez to the line then, goes 6th fastest in his Red Bull, now with a clean lap under his belt. That lap that was interrupted slightly by Alex Albon has been reviewed. No further investigation for impeding on that occasion. So Albon and Perez have that weight lifted. Albon currently up in 8th spot, so a good lap time from the Williams driver. His teammate down in the elimination zone in 17th needs to go again. So does the home hero Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber. His teammate is all the way up in 7th, so there is time in that Sauber to find for the Chinese racer. Daniel Ricciardo on an outlap at the moment will get time for one final flyer. He's down in 18th. So will Lewis Hamilton, so will Kevin Magnussen, all hoping to go again and get themselves into the next part of qualifying. We are setting the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. Zhou Guanyu navigates a little bit of traffic. One of the few drivers who has never raced at this Shanghai International Circuit. Last time we were here it was 2019. Zhou navigating the left-hander of turn 7. We commented earlier, Sam, when we saw the onboard from Zhou, that it just looked a bit stiff, and it's still looking that way.
Front is skipping across the surface. That was a little bit better that lap. He attacked it a bit more, and the front did stick through turn 8 just a little bit better. I think this car has potential around this track. Maybe they've improved a little bit. But what has he got in the final sector? This is now his final attempt to get through to Q2. He's got to pick a braking point, probably about 90 metres. Yellow flag in sector 2. He's run deep. He's locked up, and that'll cost him a vital couple of tenths.
He was up on Hulkenberg to get through into the top 15. Zhou currently at risk round the final corner. Sparks fly from the underneath of that Sauber. DRS to the line. It's enough for 8th for Zhou Guanyu. His teammate just improved a few moments ago up into 5th. And you can just hear the crowd roaring for Zhou Guanyu getting up into the top 10. But will it be enough? Fast lap still coming through. Stroll fastest of anybody in the first sector. Albon was lighting up the timing screens. He's currently down in 7th. We've got Lewis Hamilton going again as well. So too Nico Hulkenberg, who's looking good in the final sector. Logan Sargent, final sector is not looking good enough. Daniel Ricciardo on a lap as well. What's it going to be, though, for those who are currently languishing at the back in these final 5 seconds to get themselves clear into the next part of qualifying? Magnussen goes through up into 10th. Hulkenberg, once again proving to be an ace in qualifying, puts that Haas up into 4th. Hamilton, slight lock-up coming into the hairpin. One final corner for the 7-time champion. How much time can he find in that Mercedes? His teammate is only down in 12th, and that's where Hamilton finds himself. He does improve, but there are those going quickly around him. Ricciardo in the RB, up into 9th. Has Daniel Ricciardo refound some of that form that we know he has? Gasly up on time as well. Russell and Hamilton are going to be in danger here. So too is Charles Leclerc, as Stroll goes up into 8th. That knocks Leclerc down into the bottom 16. Leclerc coming into the final sector now. Russell finds time, puts that Mercedes up into the top 5. Leclerc's in trouble here, but he's gotten fastest of anybody in the middle sector, finding time. That's going to put Lewis Hamilton at risk, and Hamilton will not get to go again. Verstappen goes to the top of the timings, and the checkered flag is out. Hamilton might well find himself knocked out of qualifying here if Leclerc continues to put a good lap together. Gasly goes through up into 9th, and that's already done it for Hamilton. He is out of this session. The 7-time champion will qualify at best 16th, make that 17th as Ocon goes through into 11th. Leclerc's looking quick. Tsunoda also finding time. Leclerc goes second. That puts Perez down in 15th, and at risk, Zhou Guanyu will not give the home crowd something to smile about. He does not progress through. Neither does Yuki Tsunoda. Is Kevin Magnussen still on that? No, he is not. Perez makes it through by a whisker.
Are we through? No, I'm afraid we've been bumped, Lewis.
And he absolutely has been. 18th place at best. Lewis Hamilton will start the Chinese Grand Prix. The man who has the most wins, the most poles around this track, will start right at the back of the grid. Out at the end of Q1, Zhou Guanyu 16th, Kevin Magnussen 17th, Lewis Hamilton 18th, Yuki Tsunoda 19th, and Logan Sargent 20th and last. We had a yellow flag come out briefly towards the end, Sam, and we're just seeing a replay of Logan Sargent losing the rear. Losing the rear of his Williams. That was Sargent on the radio sounding exasperated as he made his way through the fast left-right-handers of turn 7 and 8.
Yeah, big spin there. Those tyres are definitely second-hand. We're now on board with Lewis Hamilton coming into the second last corner, the big braking hairpin, and he's just got no front, just micro-locking that front right all the way through the corner. That's cost him a couple of tenths. That's what might have cost him a chance to be in Q2.
Last Q1 elimination for Lewis Hamilton was Jeddah 2022. And he will start at best 18th. Tsunoda in the RB will be behind him. It's been a rough weekend for the Japanese driver, who's looked so quick from the get-go. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo.
That was close, yeah.
Ricciardo has made it through. He was 14th. Sergio Perez, who you just heard on the radio there, was 15th. And he said that was close. It really was close. Right on the bubble, less than a tenth of a second separating him and elimination.
Very, very close for Sergio Perez. Daniel Ricciardo's having a better weekend. Yuki Tsunoda's had a great start to the year, but here he looks a little bit all at sea. But Lewis Hamilton, second this morning in the sprint race, but eliminated an 18th in Q1. I mean, that's not the afternoon that he would have wanted at all.
A real shame as well for Zhou Guanyu when his home race does get eliminated, continues to have the longest current run of consecutive Q1 eliminations. His teammate Valtteri Bottas makes it through, finished that session all the way up in 9th. But that is Q1 done and dusted as we set the grid for Sunday's Chinese Grand Prix. And to reconfirm,
definitely something going on. I mean, can't be 19, honestly. Lap was pretty good.
That was Yuki Tsunoda on the radio. There must be something wrong. I mean, when you have a sudden drop-off of performance, it is a bit worrying.
It's like they swap places, the two RB drivers.
They swap chassis.
Yeah, yeah. When's the new chassis coming for Tsunoda? 19th in the end for Tsunoda, only in front of Logan Sargent. So a lot of question marks down at RB.
Just to explain that joke Sam made, so into this weekend, Daniel Ricciardo got given a new chassis with the RB. That was his sort of last chance saloon explanation for his lack of pace, which he didn't have one basically. And usually, Sam, when a team changes the chassis for a driver, it's like, look, we don't think there's anything wrong. There's something psychological going on here.
Yeah, it was really difficult. I don't know why. I just lost all the grip in 2014.
That's Zhou Guanyu explaining he doesn't really know why he was so slow. Lost all grip. He is out of qualifying.
But sometimes the driver has felt something wrong in the car that the team just can't spot, and you never get a definitive answer to that question. So Ricciardo in the new chassis this weekend, he's had a better weekend, although whether it's actually better is a different question, because he's around about where he's been in most of the other races. It's just that Tsunoda's generally been higher than that, whereas this weekend for some reason Tsunoda's lower, and now he finds himself in a position not being able to explain why he's so slow, which I guess Lewis Hamilton may well find himself in too.
I think time will tell when it comes to Ricciardo's pace. I think judging it here, given the slight strangeness of the grip around this circuit. I think when we go somewhere that we know and understand a little bit more, we'll get an idea of whether this other chassis that he's now using is an improvement or whether it's been like, well, we need to give it to you just to show that we're trying to help you, but it's not made any difference.
Messy session then for a lot of drivers, really. To reconfirm who is out after Q1, Zhou Guanyu running deep into the hairpin, 16th for the Sauber man in front of Kevin Magnussen. The same for Lewis Hamilton down in 18th, Yuki Tsunoda 19th, Logan Sargent in 20th. The next stage of qualifying shortly to begin, Q2, where the next slowest drivers will be eliminated. 15 minutes on the clock and counting.
And just to look up at the front, Harry, for a second, as we get Q2, obviously the front's not the main issue in the second part of qualifying, but we've got Verstappen. I did say at the beginning of the session, didn't I, that I thought Leclerc would be quick, and there he is, 500ths behind Max Verstappen at the front. The McLarens are looking better than they expected to be this weekend, and Sainz and Leclerc is an interesting comparison because there's 2/10 or just under 2/10 between Leclerc and Sainz. Leclerc came into the weekend saying he'd been disappointed with his qualifying form. It was all to do with tyre preparation rather than his actual driving, and he'd worked hard on the gap between the last race in Japan and China on that tyre preparation. He was hoping it would mark a step forward. So far, it has looked like he has made that progress. He made a mistake in wet qualifying yesterday and kind of wrecked his chances, but when it's been dry, Leclerc's looked like the quicker Ferrari driver all weekend. Let's see if he can hold it together through the rest of qualifying.
Cheers erupting in the background from the main grandstand as Zhou Guanyu walks towards or down the pit lane despite the 16th place qualifying. Zhou has been looking, there is pace in that Sauber, proven by Valtteri Bottas, who, what was your prediction, Sam, into Q3, was it?
I said into Q3, yes.
Well, I mean, he finished 9th at the end of that Q1 session. So.
I know what I'm talking about, Harry.
Well, you've got 13 and a half more minutes to hold on to that prediction.
Another bit of weirdness going on, just for everyone to keep their eyes on, is at Alpine. They've had a good session there.
That's what it is.
Hamilton apologising. I think he's probably apologising for that lock-up into the hairpin that we saw. Whether that was enough to get him into Q2, Sam, I'm not so sure.
It might have been enough, but it would have been really scraping through. Yeah. Really scraping through.
He might have got a 10th or 2 there, but that's okay. It would get him into Q2, but he's still a long way off the pace and quite a long way behind Russell, his teammate. Anyway, just back to Alpine briefly. Esteban Ocon's been the quicker driver at Alpine so far this season, which is a surprise because actually Gasly had his measure last year, especially in qualifying. But they've got a new floor on that car this weekend, but there's only one of them, and Ocon's got it. And yet Gasly has been quicker than Ocon basically in qualifying trim all weekend so far, and he is again not by much, but a 10th or so in that first session. So I don't know what that means about the floor. Of course, they're hoping it's a big step forward, but it might just be that Gasly's found his form finally, and the gap between him and Ocon would have been bigger if he'd had the floor as well.
I think the fact that the grip level here it seems quite low. This could be a chance for Alpine this weekend. I think that with mixed weather, low grip, this is a chance for them to score some really valuable points, or at least a sneak into the points, because the first few races they've looked all at sea. They've looked shocking, quite frankly. The car's been very slow. One other interesting thing that you mentioned, Andrew, is the Charles Leclerc tyre warm-up issue. So for anybody listening, he races for Ferrari. That's probably the second quickest car out there. So you would say that with his talent and in a Ferrari, he should always be qualifying either front row or second row. Now, it's not always the case, because if you don't do a good tyre warm-up, and it's something that the drivers and the teams will work on in the simulator and just through knowledge from all the racing that he's done. If you don't do a good tyre warm-up, you can be the best driver in the world, you can have the best car in the world, but if the tyre isn't in the best window, if the surface temperature isn't in the right window and the bulk temp isn't in the right window, you're not going to have as much grip as what the car is capable of.
And I cannot stop twice like this.
And you can lose a couple of tenths, as Charles Leclerc says. You cannot stop like this. Presumably that's leaving the pits.
Yeah, Leclerc just making his way out now.
And that will be about tyre temperature, that remark. I cannot stop twice like this. What he's worried about there, he's just got tyre warmers on the tyres in the garage. He pulls out of the garage. If he has to stop at the end of the pit lane, he's losing that tyre temperature. He knows he's got the tyre prep sorted out this weekend because of his performance so far. He doesn't want to mess it up by being blocked in the pit lane, Sam.
No, well, the core and the bulk temperature will remain. That's more difficult to get rid of, but the surface temperature, as soon as those tyres leave the blankets, they're going down in temperature. And over the last couple of years, Formula One have worked hard to try and reduce the amount of heat that teams can put into the blankets. I think they've reduced it by 30 to 40 degrees, which makes a big difference. Now the drivers are having to work quite a bit harder to get temperature into the tyres. Maybe not so much on the softs or the super softs, but in some of the tyres they really struggle for that temperature.
And it's interesting though, isn't it, talking about the stoppage that Leclerc was complaining about on the radio in a season where strategically Ferrari seemed to have been making better calls, not only in the race but in terms of their implementation of overall logistics throughout a weekend. So that kind of thing Leclerc will want to nip in the bud straight away.
Absolutely.
That's not necessarily a Ferrari issue though, Harry. It might be that someone else has stopped in front of him in the pit lane when they're leaving and he can't go anywhere, you know.
True. 9 minutes then and counting for this second part of qualifying. We're into Q2 and it's all about getting into the top 10. Everybody from 11th down to 15th will be eliminated, and the first flying laps are coming in now. Hulkenberg with the first one, a 1:34.9 in the Haas, the German driver, out qualifying his teammate Kevin Magnussen, who couldn't make it through. Hulkenberg becoming a bit of a Mr. Saturday in terms of getting one lap pace out of his machine. Fernando Alonso, this is the sound of the Spaniard in his Aston Martin, making his way round the right-hander of turn 11, up into 6th gear, then 7th as he heads down onto the 1.4 kilometre back straight that makes up over 5.4 kilometres of this Shanghai International Circuit. The drag reduction system, the DRS board, flies open on the rear wing of that Aston Martin, then slams shut under braking, and he goes deep into the hairpin. On exit, onto the throttle, traction through to the final corner, the left-hander, 90 degrees, slightly banked. The DRS line comes quickly back open. It's still enough for fastest in these early stages, a 1:34.8. It's immediately eclipsed by Piastri, who's going quicker as he crosses the line, goes a tenth and a half up on Alonso. It's Piastri who has the fastest lap time. A reminder though, it's the bottom 5 drivers that will be eliminated, and it will come as no surprise that Verstappen is currently going fastest of anybody in the first sector and in the middle sector as Norris takes over as P1. Bottas in the Sauber with another strong lap. Behind the Haas though, their immediate rivals in these early stages, in 5th. This is Verstappen coming to the line, and he'll go right to the top of the timing standings. Decent lap from Verstappen there. We look to Leclerc, Perez and Sainz yet to get their first proper laps on the board. Sainz good in the middle sector. Leclerc on an outlap at the moment.
No, he's just finished lap on used tyres,
hasn't he? Yeah, I was going to say, because he was looking slow, so he's down in 9th. So Perez goes for his spin for Sainz into the gravel, gets spun round, hits the advertising hoarding on the opposite side of the track. He dipped a wheel into the gravel on the exit. That sent him round immediately, slides across the track, hits the advertising boarding, facing the wrong way. Yellow flag out. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, with his head in his hands. That brings out the red flag almost immediately. The clock stops at 6 minutes and 44 seconds, but Sainz on the radio saying he's okay, and we're getting an onboard shot now as he looks down at his steering wheel to try and get that Ferrari back and going again, but he just carried so much speed coming into that final left-hander, dipped a wheel onto the gravel, Sam.
Oh, has he damaged the front corner and the rear corner on the right-hand side of that Ferrari? He's just gone in. Oh, just taken a little bit too much on the exit.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
As he apologises to his team. I think those wheels might be straight, but if he's caused a red flag, is he allowed to continue? If he's Andrew, if he's caused that red, Is he now able to bring it round?
If he can get the car back, he can carry on, but he's hit the wall. Okay, it's side on, but he's gone front corner first, then rear corner, and I think that's going to damage the car too much for him to continue.
Yeah, we're just in the middle of qualifying now. The big name to fall out of the first part was Lewis Hamilton. Unfortunately, at best, he'll start the Grand Prix from 18th. A bit of a mistake and lacking pace in that car. We're currently under red flag conditions due to a crash for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. He's making his way back to the pits now, but qualifying temporarily coming to a stop. But it is looking like Max Verstappen, as usual, is the man to beat. Thank you for bearing with us on that. Just doing a quick update into 5 Live. Back to on-track action. So Sainz has got back going again. He's completely missing the front wing. Slowly making his way back to pit lane. Red flag out then. Didn't finish that lap. Spun round before he could complete it. Verstappen fastest at the moment. In the elimination zone is Albon in 11th. Ocon, Gasly, Sainz, then Russell, who also didn't get a time. He was on course to put that lap time in until the red flag came out. Sainz's teammate Leclerc makes it back to the pits. And this is the sound of Sainz, and the tyres look a little bit worse for wear as well, especially that front right.
Well, the tyres are the least of his concerns. It is the steering wheel pointing in a straight line. Has that knocked out the tracking? Is the car crabbing at all? Those are the things that he's going to be looking out for now. Those tyres are second-hand and they'll go in the bin. But can they just make sure that, firstly, the car is safe for him to go out again? They'll, of course, put a new front wing on it, new tyres on it. If it's able to go out, I still fancy him to sneak through, even though he's had that issue.
I was looking under the nose, Sam, at the strakes at the front of the floor and everything. They didn't look like they were damaged, really, did they? It's just a question of how the suspension is and where the side-on impact's gone, front and rear there on the right-hand side. What was interesting there was that he and Leclerc had taken a different strategy to qualifying. Sainz had started the first session on the medium tyres. The idea was to give himself 2 sets of new tyres for this second session, whereas Leclerc did 2 runs on the soft in the first session. So Leclerc did his first run on used softs, which is why he's down in 9th place. Sainz was finishing his first lap there on a new set of softs, but he dropped that wheel, rear wheel, into the gravel on the exit of the last corner and has spun himself round. And so in theory, he'd chosen a wise tyre strategy, but he's seems like he might have messed it up for himself with that error.
We just saw Sainz making his way down the back straight. Didn't look like there was any kind of crabbing going on. Here he's on the radio.
Suspension okay. I tried to crash completely sideways to no damage. But
Yeah, I saw that.
So that was Sainz saying suspension is okay. He crashed sideways into the wall, but you're right, Andrew, there was a slight tilt to the front end and then the rear going in after that. But
he said he tried to crash completely sideways, was what he said.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, which was interesting. Yeah, he's trying to get it to go in and make as little damage. It's actually not a wall there, it's a barrier, a sort of impact absorbing barrier, Sam, so he might get away with it.
And these cars are very strong when it comes to impacts compared to other formulas. They are designed to withstand certain amounts. Do you know what? I think he's got away with this. I think he's a lucky boy. Okay, quite skillful to try and crash to kind of square on. But
how serious is that? Can you really do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you watch these guys spin, they spin and they're still trying to be in control during a spin to get the car in a straight line in an event of a crash or in the event that they can get the car back on track. The Ferrari mechanics now will be working super fast to get that new front wing on, just to make sure that there's no debris in the side pods, new tyres on, and then through to Q3, please.
Talking of trying to control a crash, do you remember, I think it was 2010 in China, where on the back straight, Sebastian Buemi's Toro Rosso suspension just completely went on the front, both wheels popped off, and he obviously then has no control. But I think on the onboard, he still tries to steer the car
into the
gravel.
Absolutely.
Even when all is lost, there'll still be a bit of trying to organise where you end up by the driver. Well then, it seems like Carlos Sainz and Ferrari might well have got away with that one. He's made his way back into the pits, and if they can clear the car and get it tidied up, they were already preparing the new front wing. They will be able to send him back out again and qualify, because he hasn't got a lap time in. Neither did George Russell in the Mercedes either, who'll be keen to get out there. We will restart this session with 6 minutes and 44 seconds. That was when the red flag came out, and in qualifying the clock does stop, unlike in practice where it continues to count down.
So in other formulas, Andrew, they've got a rule and regulation, I think it's IndyCar, where if you cause a red flag, you then lose your fastest lap time within the session. Is this something that you think Formula One should implement? Because obviously Carlos Sainz there has effectively taken away the opportunity for quite a few people to complete a timed lap. Therefore, should he have his best time disallowed and then go for his second best?
Well, look, it's not up to me, is it? It's a
no, I know, but if you were the boss of Formula One,
it's a judgment call. Now, this has been a topic for a while now, because not really because of incidents like this, but more to do with incidents like, for example, in Monaco, people set pole position and then they have an accident. Now,
Michael Raskas.
Well, that wasn't an accident. He just drove into the wall and parked, didn't he? But the most controversial one was Nico Rosberg in 2014, where he set pole and then he sort of disappeared down the escape road in a very dubious looking way at Mirabeau, and he secured his pole.
Perez last year as well in Monaco.
Verstappen thinks Perez deliberately crashed 2 years ago, Harry.
2 years ago, sorry.
To secure his place on the second row ahead of Verstappen. And Leclerc has had crashes at the swimming pool, having set pole at Monaco. Now, I think in Leclerc's case, no one's suggesting that his was deliberate. But it's those sorts of situations that people have said, should that driver be allowed to get away with that? I'm not a big fan of this idea, if you're asking me for my opinion, of forcing someone to lose their time if they make a mistake. I think qualifying should be about driving to the absolute limit of your potential, and even the best drivers in the world make mistakes from time to time in those situations. So I like the fact that qualifying is about really hanging it all out, and I wouldn't want to see qualifying not be that. I think the stewards, is beholden upon the stewards to punish drivers who are perceived to have crashed deliberately. So, and the question becomes, do we have faith in the stewards to act correctly in those situations? So Max Verstappen, in the case of the Perez incident in Monaco 2 years ago, he was absolutely adamant, having seen the data, that Perez crashed deliberately at Portier. And he was very angry about it, and that's what happened a few months later in Brazil. That's why he refused to let Perez by in his quest to be second in the championship against Charles Leclerc at Ferrari. Verstappen doesn't talk about it anymore, but he's still strongly of that belief. Lewis Hamilton believes strongly that Nico Rosberg crashed deliberately or went off deliberately at Mirabeau. Now, in the case of Schumacher, it was so obvious. Everybody could tell he just deliberately parked it gently against the barrier without damaging the car. This is in 2006, in the most notorious of a series of notorious incidents that Michael Schumacher was involved in that were to do with underhand behaviour. People, I think, would like to think that the stewards would act in the case of Perez, would act in the case of Rosberg. But I don't think it's fair to say that in Formula One there's a great deal of belief that the stewards will act in those situations and do get it right. I think, for me, personally, I would rather it was dealt with by the stewards if drivers are seen to be doing something underhand, than there's just some rule that stops drivers, that punishes them automatically for making an honest error, if you like. What do you think, though?
I can see both sides of it. I completely agree with your points of that you've laid out there, and I agree. I want to see the fastest guys try and set the fastest times and be right on the limit of adhesion when they go out for qualifying. Having said that, I can see from a competitor's point of view, if somebody that you're fighting against has lost it, you were on a lap behind, and then you lose the opportunity to finish your lap, and they're in front of you on the grid because of a previous lap, and you were up on your lap, I can see why you would say, I want them to lose their fastest lap. Absolutely, of course. So I can see both. This downtime will be really helping Carlos Sainz right now, because he's gone through those advertising boardings, scattered them around a little bit onto the grass. The marshals and officials have got to clean that up. That's giving Ferrari enough time to make sure that car is safe and perfect to go out together.
Well, we will get the session restarted imminently. 3:45 local time, so we are mere seconds away from Q2 getting back underway then, and on the bubble needing to go again, and in the elimination zone is Ricciardo 10th, Albon 11th, Ocon 12th, Gasly 13th, Sainz, Ferrari doing a quick turnaround to get that car ready again to go qualifying, and Russell in the Mercedes didn't get a lap time in either before the red flag, and he makes his way towards the end of the pit lane. It's going to be a bit of a 6-minute dash to the line as the green light is on, and we are back underway for qualifying, and George Russell is straight out there. Curious that there isn't a massive rush out onto the track. I kind of half expected there to be everyone piling back out again.
No, because I think with 6.5 minutes to go, it's a quite difficult time, really, because if you go now, you're going to be very, very pushed to be able to do out one push lap and in lap and then go again. You're really going to have to be pushing on your out and your in laps. So I think you might see people start to come out in the next 90 seconds or so to be there at the end of the session. Right now, the people that go out right now might be looking to do 2 runs, just about. The people that go out in 9 seconds are going to be doing 1 run.
Well, Verstappen is the next man out on track as well. Currently the fastest. He said a lap time of 1:33.9. But this is Q2. We are looking to eliminate the 5 slowest drivers. Everybody from 11th down to 15th. Russell currently making his way now towards turn 11 on his out lap. Out there on I think it's a fresh set of softs for George Russell. Making his way now towards the back straight as the clock continues to count down. And work still going on in Sainz's garage, but didn't look like there was too much damage to keep him out of qualifying. They'll be desperately getting that front wing reattached and clearing out any debris picked up by those advertising hoardings that he smashed into coming out of the final corner. Very reminiscent to Albon, who had a crash here in 2019. Much bigger impact, though, for the Toro Rosso driver back then. Actually ruled him out of qualifying, but he swung back across the main straight and ended up completely writing off that Toro Rosso. But he started from the pit lane and made it all the way back to the points in P10 last time we raced here. So it can be done, but Sainz will be hoping that he doesn't end up missing out on Q3. Only did that on 3 occasions last year. And apart from this little blip, Sainz has been having a pretty good run of things this year. He has. He's been having probably his strongest start to any Formula One season so far. So with 4.5 minutes to go on the clock, I'd say Max Verstappen he's through to Q3. Everybody else, though, I'd say needs to put in a decent lap. We're seeing quite a lot of track evolution in Shanghai today. Lando Norris sits second, but nearly half a second behind Verstappen. So everybody now is going to be fighting tooth and nail for their place in Q3. And to be honest, the order could go anywhere. Just a reminder of your prediction, Valtteri Bottas into the top 10. And where is he currently? Currently sitting pretty in 7th. Have I been wrong so far? No. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Stop doubting me, Harry. I just like the fact that of all the predictions, that was the one we made. Look, okay, I've made it for a reason. I'm sticking with it. I'll tell you what, though, because everyone will need to go again, obviously, because you have got Bottas, you've got Hülkenberg, you've got Ricciardo, all those teams in the second tier of the constructors are proving a little bit troublesome for big hitters. Sainz and Russell currently finding themselves down in 14th, 15th. Yes, no lap time yet, but that Haas, that Sauber and that RB have all been looking fairly pacey. Some of the, let's call it the lower teams, have found a little bit of form here in China for whatever reason, whether that's the lower grip levels, the nature of the circuit. You know, it is closed the mid-pack up here, made it a little bit more spicy. The gap at the front is, it's as big as ever. But
I think also the grip and the conditions are giving drivers the opportunity to sometimes outperform their car. If they can put in a really strong lap and just have a clean lap, you can get through.
So Sainz has got out again, we've just seen, and just on George Russell, in case people are expecting a time soon because he went out early, he's gone out early to do 2 preparation laps. That's obviously his way of getting the tyres into the window that we were discussing about with Charles Leclerc earlier.
That was the voice of the BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, is also the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird. You're listening to live coverage of qualifying ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix. We're into the final stages of Q2, where we eliminate the 5 slowest drivers, everybody from 11th down to 15th. We've already had Q1, where we eliminated 16th to 20th. The big name out in that session was Lewis Hamilton, who will start at best Sunday's Chinese Grand Prix from 18th position on the grid, and you can hear the Grand Prix in full on BBC Radio 5 Live. Will be on air 7:45 in the morning ahead of Lights Out 8 o'clock, so grab your cup of tea for that one. But it is still heating up nicely in these final stages of qualifying. Q2 slightly interrupted with a red flag due to an incident for Carlos Sainz coming round the final corner, dipped a wheel into the gravel that completely flung the Ferrari to the opposite side of the track, facing the wrong way. He impacted sideways into the tyre barrier. Not too much damage, a front wing change required. Everyone came back into the pits. Then we got this race back and restarted. It was Sainz and Russell who hadn't set any kind of lap time. Russell has just set a lap time in the last minute or so and gone 3rd fastest, as Sainz, now out on track with a minute left on the clock, embarks on what will be his one and only flyer. This has to be a mistake-free lap, Sam.
It does have to be a mistake-free lap, but did he trust the car completely under braking going into turn 1? When you had a spin and you've hit a wall like that, the first time you then drive the car in anger afterwards, is he going to push it at absolutely 100%? Sector 1 time? Well, I think he trusts it enough.
He is less than half a tenth of a second slower than Max Verstappen at the moment. So that is a mighty first sector from Carlos Sainz through the left-hander of turn 7. Then it's a switch to the right-hand side through turn 8 before it starts to concertina up and tightens up through the double left-handers of 9. Then 10, running a little bit out wide. The gravel, though, is there waiting to your right if you take a little bit too much track time. Lost a bit of time in that middle sector compared to Verstappen, a couple of tenths down.
The Ferrari, though, rides the bumps so well. It looks a little bit softer in terms of the pitch and the heave that it's running compared to the likes of Bottas and Zhou that we saw earlier in Q1. Ferrari's car this year is working well. Is it a Red Bull? No, but can it fight? I think it can. As he comes through into the second last corner, Carlos Sainz really having a good start to the year. Okay, he's made a mistake, but he's correcting it through the last corner. DRS active. Where does it put him? Second.
Nice lap from Carlos Sainz. He makes up for the incident earlier on, goes second fastest. Verstappen back in the pits, Sainz second, Norris third. Leclerc currently down in 12th. To the line now for the Ferrari driver, goes 3rd fastest, gets himself out of danger. That puts Daniel Ricciardo down. Sergio Perez, the next one at risk. He's currently down in 10th, goes across the line, puts himself into P2. But what can Valtteri Bottas do? To the line and gets into the top 10. At the very last moment, the Sauber driver gets through and Stroll will be behind it, but Stroll is done and dusted. He will not find a way through into the next part of Q3. Neither will Daniel Ricciardo. Esteban Ocon 13th, Alex Albon 14th, Pierre Gasly 15th, and out at the end of Q2. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Sam had the prediction right from the get-go that Valtteri Bottas would get through to Q3, and he did. Here's Sainz.
So we confirm all okay with the car? Yeah, it must be.
Carlos Sainz asked if all is okay with the car. He replies with, yeah, it must be. 3rd fastest, half a second down on Verstappen, ahead of his teammate Leclerc, who has looked like he's had the upper hand for most of the sessions so far this weekend, after a crash into the tyre barriers, causing a red flag. A change of front wing required for Sainz. Back out there, he had 1 lap to do it, and he put it up into 3rd. But out of that session. Stroll 11th for Sauber, for Aston Martin, I should say. Ricciardo out in the RB, but he has out-qualified his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. That's actually Ricciardo's second best qualifying of the season. Ocon 13th, Albon 14th, Gasly 15th.
So at the front is a slightly depressing picture, I would say. The Red Bull has probably a bigger advantage here than it's had at any race so far this season. 3/10. Both Perez and Verstappen are clear of the Ferraris. It doesn't look, here's Albon's radio.
We are so on a knife edge with everything.
Yeah, well managed, Alex. We can see from the video. It's just difficult to get between the high speed and low speed, but well done today.
Yeah, thank you.
Albon on the radio there, cast so on a knife edge. Albon, who has been knocked out in Q2 at every race this year, continues that trend. 14th at best for Sunday's Grand Prix.
Yeah, it just looks like the Red Bulls in a different league to everything else this weekend. So I can't see any challenge for them for pole position, unfortunately.
When you watch the Red Bull, watch how it's able to rotate at the hairpin and carry what looks like 5, 6, 7 kilometers an hour more than every other car out there. Everybody else is struggling with front locking. They seem to be able to bleed off the brake and just fire speed through corners like miles more than anybody else. Their mechanical grip and aerodynamical grip combined just seems in a different league.
Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin gets knocked out in Q2 for the second time this season. Last time out in Japan, he couldn't make it through to Q2. Bottas made it through.
We are through in P10. Good job. Yes. Good job.
Best qualifying of the year for Valtteri Bottas, who's currently down in 20th in the driver's standings, only in front of Logan Sargent, but Valtteri's previous best was 13th, so no matter what he does, if he gets 10th, that will be his best start so far this season in a Sauber that seems to have underlying potential and speed, but they've had issues, Sam, in the pit stops in every race so far this season that have just cost them time and time again. So they'll be really hoping that can keep to a minimum for Sunday's Grand Prix, no matter what they do in qualifying.
Well, yeah, until they fix that issue with the nut in the pit stop and the guns, they're going to struggle this year. I mean, it's great that he's through to Q3, but Valtteri could be running in the top 5 in the race and have brilliant pace, but if you have a 30-second pit stop twice a race, you're never going to finish in the points. So this is an issue that Sauber need to correct. I believe that it's like priority number 1 in the team right now is just correct that issue.
We've heard by Imola they should have a permanent fix, but that still leaves China and Miami. I mean, this is a team sport. We can forget that sometimes because it is the driver that has the limelight. But the pit stops, the engineers, the mechanics are crucial. How frustrating is it, though, as a driver, when something as big of an issue as that is so out of your control?
It is hugely frustrating, but as a driver, all you can do is drive your racing car to the best of your ability. If you've done that, then you can go back to your hotel or go home happy with what you've been able to do. Sometimes you need to say, right, I don't have a winning car, or we've got these issues. Did I perform at the best of my ability? If the answer is yes, you should be able to walk away from work with a smile on your face.
Well, a couple of minutes then until we get into this final part of qualifying, which Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber will be taking part. So too will the Haas of Nico Hülkenberg, the 2 McLarens of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, the 1 remaining Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso, the 1 remaining Mercedes of George Russell, the 2 Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, and the 2 Red Bulls of Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Verstappen once again looking like the man to beat. Perez got within a couple of tenths in Q2, which it sounds a bit depressing to say is encouraging, but it's still not great, is it? But that's where he needs to be, P2.
That's all he needs to do. That's what he's employed by Red Bull to do. He's there to be first if Max Verstappen has an issue, or if Max Verstappen doesn't have an issue, he's there to come second.
Well, the session Q3 will start at 4 o'clock local time. So in about a minute's time, we will get the green light at the end of the pit lane and look ahead as we set the grid for the top 10. But Formula One back in China for the first time in 5 years. The grandstands are absolutely packed out. A lot here to see their home hero Zhou Guanyu. A lot here just to see Formula One cars back on the circuit. 5.4 kilometres, just over that in length, 3.3 miles, 16 turns, 7 to the left, 9 to the right. And actually the 20th anniversary of the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend. Fernando Alonso sitting quietly in his garage, just getting in that final zone before he is sent out onto the track. Mercedes of George Russell is the first to venture out into the pit lane. Russell, whose best qualifying so far this year for a Grand Prix has been third all the way back in round 1 in Bahrain, which seems so long ago.
So Russell's going out for a sighter on used soft tyres at the beginning. Both Red Bulls leaving the pits on a set of brand new softs. They've obviously been able to save a set of softs each. They'll be going out going new. Russell will go fresh but slower and then go to new at the end of the session.
Hulkenberg joins the gaggle out on track, and we are underway then for Q3 as we set the top 10 for Sunday's Grand Prix and find out who will be pole position. But it doesn't take too much to figure that out. Max Verstappen has been looking...
Don't ruin it for everybody
so far. I don't want to ruin it, but I don't want to over-egg it and get too excited either. It's Formula One. Anything can happen.
There we go.
But on pace alone, Verstappen is the bookie's favourite.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't put a bet on. But
where will Valtteri Bottas finish? That's the real question that we're asking in the commentary box.
I actually think that behind Max Verstappen, it's quite intriguing, to be honest. Sergio Perez versus Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. That could be an interesting battle. Who's going to win the inter-team battle of Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri? They've been pretty close in terms of lap time. And can Fernando Alonso get himself amongst the Ferraris and the McLarens?
Just some of the battles then to watch behind the one for pole position. This is the sound of Carlos Sainz on his outlap, making his way now, getting heat into the tyres on the set of softs. Everybody on that soft compounder tyre, the quickest rubber, the softest rubber out on track. And everybody, with the exception of Valtteri Bottas, has come out of the pit lane. So Bottas wanting to run a little bit out of sync with the rest of the field?
Maybe, or the fact that he's one set down on everybody else in terms of the soft compound tyres, so he just probably will go for the one new set later on in the session.
10 minutes to go already. Got 9 cars out on track, weaving left, weaving right, trying to get tyres up to temperature. With no chance of rain today, unlike yesterday where the rain came in and was incredibly intense and led to one of the most chaotic sessions of the whole year. No chance of that this time around. Dry conditions, air temperature 22 degrees, track temperature 32.6 degrees as Max Verstappen embarks on his first flying lap at a track where he hasn't actually ever had pole position before. Last time we came here in 2019, Max Verstappen was not a champion. Q3 has just started as we set the grid for the top 10 for the Chinese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen does look like the man to beat, but the big names that we have lost so far, Lewis Hamilton at best will start down in 18th after a tough run in his Mercedes, but pole position might well go the way of Verstappen, but it's still all to play for. The Ferraris, the McLarens, all looking quick as well. Did that sell the coverage enough, Sam, do you think? Was that sort of positive enough?
You did very well.
Thank you.
You did very well.
I just don't want to, it is Verstappen's to win. He's fastest in the middle sector. Alonso, fastest of anybody in the first sector, though. The wily old fox who started the sprint from the second row earlier today. Always knows and always can get the absolute maximum out of any car he's given. In fact, he was saying in the build-up this week that actually, if there's any problems with a car, he's usually driving around them, which can be a bit negative when it comes to feedback to the engineers, because any issues, he's not really one to spot them. He just drives round the problem. So, don't know what's better, really. Verstappen to the line, will set his first flying lap, and he goes fastest, a 1:33.9. Perez, personal best in sector 1 and 2, will be the next man around the final corner across the line. Second fastest is the two Red Bulls with the early markers 1 and 2. Hulkenberg third, Russell fourth. Only 4 drivers have set a lap time so far. This is the sound of Fernando Alonso, fastest of anybody in sector 1. Good middle sector as well. To the line for Alonso, splits the Red Bulls, a 1:34.3 for the Spaniard. 4 tenths back from Max Verstappen. Lando Norris is next to round the final corner, almost does a signs and dips a wheel into the gravel, keeps it pointing on the straight and narrow. 4th fastest for that was Piastri, actually, wasn't it? 4th fastest for Piastri. Norris then comes across the line. He is the next McLaren out on track. He goes 4th fastest. It's Verstappen, Alonso, Perez, Norris, Piastri, the top 5. Sainz, Hulkenberg, Russell, the top 8. Actually, Leclerc just slots in 7th. So, opening gambits from the two Ferraris leaves them 6th and 7th.
Surprising, very surprising. I mean, we're not surprised by Fernando Alonso anymore, are we? He's just always finding the absolute best out of the Aston Martin, as we see a replay of Oscar Piastri probably losing a couple of tenths on the exit at the last corner, having to correct. It's never the fastest way through a corner when you dip a wheel into the gravel, so he might have lost a little bit of drive to the finish line. Lovely bit of sound of the gravel just being flicked up from the tyres.
Well, I wonder if he might lose his lap as well. It looked like 4 wheels over the white line on that occasion for Piastri. We'll wait and see if anything crops up on the race director's notes.
I think it's going to need a very special lap from someone like Alonso, Perez, or the Ferraris, or even the McLarens to beat Verstappen's time that he's done. The time that he's done is actually slower than what he did in Q2, although I think it's probably already enough. I don't think anybody's going to get close enough.
So something weird's going on with those Ferraris. The timing screens are telling us that they're on new tyres for that lap, but how can they be? 7 tenths off. It's more than 7 tenths, in fact, isn't it? It's 7 tenths. And behind Alonso and both McLarens. It doesn't make any sense.
Piastri on the radio asking the team to check the floor as he comes into the pit lane after running over the gravel on the exit of the final corner. Both McLarens making their way back to the pit. So far, at the moment, they're 4th and 5th. McLaren hasn't actually had a top 6 start in China since Lewis Hamilton left the team back in 2012. They're looking to try and make amends for that. Norris currently 4th, Piastri 5th. And as we were just saying, Sainz and Leclerc behind the two Ferraris in 6th and 7th. Hulkenberg is 8th, Russell down in 9th. Bottas, no time on the board yet for the Sauber. We might well see him have one run towards the end of the session. But it's Verstappen on provisional pole, a 1:33.9, 4 tenths clear of Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, trying to split the two Red Bulls to get himself a front row start. I wonder if Alonso could get on the front row, gets a good start. He's the man that's gonna sling it down the inside of Verstappen and try and find a way through early doors. No?
I love your optimism. That's really great.
I'm really trying here.
I mean, if Alonso were to get a front row and were to lead into turn 1, I don't think it would last very long, but it would be great.
Think of the sound clips, the sound bites.
Oh,
Think
great.
Of the sound bites. 4 minutes left to run. You are listening to live coverage of qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix. The last 4 minutes of Q3. 10 drivers left in it as the battle for pole position is on. Verstappen currently in that provisional pole with a 1:33.9 in front of Alonso, Perez, Norris, Piastri, the top 5. Sainz, Leclerc, Hulkenberg, Russell and Bottas, the top 10. First runs complete, second runs imminently underway as cars peel out from the pit lane and set about on their outlap, getting tyres up to temperature, finding themselves a bit of space on track. It's interesting actually, I know now we've only got 10 cars, but even when we had 20 cars in the sprint qualifying session, it seemed in that final sector, especially coming out from the hairpin into the final corner, that traffic was a real issue, just trying to find the right place to put your car. So far, it doesn't seem like there's really been that issue across this qualifying session.
No, it seems to be much better today than it was previously. Where the traffic is actually on pit exit, as everybody just concertinas up and goes so slowly, giving themselves a gap. It's something that I think Formula One definitely needs to address, and they've been speaking about it now for months and months. But the way in which people are coming out the pits is I don't think it's a good look for Formula One, let's put it that way. Both Ferraris are now out on a new set of tyres. We were a little bit confused as to why they're down in 6th and 7th. We're not sure whether they were out on fresh or new on the previous run. I presume F1 timing screens have got it wrong, and they were on fresh tyres, because they've been the cars to try and take it to Red Bull this weekend.
Well, Sam, I think the screens must have got it wrong, because not only were they were out of position, they were also 4/10 slower on their first laps in Q3 than they were in their flying laps in Q2. So that has to be used tyres.
Well, everybody out there now, so we'll see what they've all got in these last 2 minutes. Max Verstappen looking to make it 5 poles from 5 qualifyings this season would take him to 37 career poles as the man continues to make new records. Can anybody find anything in these final moments? Every car will get 1 lap to set their fastest time. Sainz makes his way round the final corner and begins his final flyer. Carlos Sainz, who is the only man so far to have beaten Max Verstappen and taken a race win through turn 1, has to have a slight alteration on the steering as he turns into the double right-hander, and then immediately you're turning left and almost going back on yourself, such as a full 360-degree corner. You ebb over the crest of turn 5 before you get the first proper braking zone of turn 6, and then out through the right-hander, uphill, turn 7, the left-hander, the first of the S's into the right-hander of turn 8, before you then get into the braking zone of turn 9, the double left-hander bringing you through the middle part of a lap of this Shanghai International Circuit. Nico Hülkenberg and the Haas further back is having a great final sector. The man who is so good at getting pace in 1 lap out of his Haas. Bottas personal best from him in his 1 flyer that he will get. Leclerc, though, is fastest of anybody in the middle sector as he makes his way now into the final sector. Sainz down on Verstappen through the middle sector. Piastri going well too as he comes into the final sector, making up time. He's currently down in 6th fastest, and nip and tuck with his teammate Lando Norris. Actually, Piastri was faster through the middle sector compared to his teammate Norris. Verstappen then on provisional pole as the checkered flag is out. Sainz tries to challenge but only goes second, 3/10 down. Next across the line will be his teammate Charles Leclerc, who immediately displaces him. Leclerc to second, Ferrari 2 and 3. Piastri in the McLaren will next across the line, and what a lap from Oscar Piastri to go second fastest, just below 0.3 of a second to Max Verstappen. The checkered flag is out next for Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber, who cements 10th place in a top 10 start. Lando Norris now second fastest. The 2 McLarens currently making up second and third. Verstappen, fastest of anybody in the middle sector, extends his gap at the top to half a second. Fastest of anybody in the middle sector, fastest of anybody in the final sector. Max Verstappen on course to take his 5th pole this season. Alonso, Perez still on laps. Perez needs to find time here. Alonso to the front row next. He goes second fastest. Can Perez deny Fernando Alonso a front row start? Yes, he can. It will be a Red Bull 1-2 for the Chinese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen takes his 5th pole of the year. And a Red Bull lockout with Sergio Perez in second. Fernando Alonso will start in third for Aston Martin. His best qualifying of the season, ahead of the two McLarens. Lando Norris in front of Oscar Piastri. And the two Ferraris end up 6th and 7th. Leclerc in front of Sainz. Russell is 8th with Hülkenberg in the Haas. And the Sauber of Bottas rounding out the top 10.
Really exciting Q3 that. I mean, Verstappen radio?
But it is pole position, mate. So just over 3/10. Nice job. Checo P2.
Yeah, very lovely that. I mean, the car was definitely very quick and quality, so well done.
So, Max, fantastic performance. That's number 100. So, fantastic performance.
Yeah, nice step down for the team as well. Well done.
So Verstappen obviously on pole, but behind him, the fight for second, third, fourth was fantastic. I'm surprised that Ferrari are down in 6th and 7th, but great job by Alonso, as always, and great to see the McLarens up there.
Max Verstappen seals his 37th career pole position, and in doing so takes Red Bull's 100th pole position in Formula One at the same circuit they scored their first ever pole position. And that is one for the history books. Perez makes it a 1-2.
Tidied up.
Good job, guys. Good result for tomorrow.
Really super, Checo. Really, really good good second run there. And that's 100 poles for us. So 15 years after the first one. Well done, mate.
Well done, mate. Well done to the whole team.
Pat on the back all round for the Red Bull team. Alonso third, the two McLarens stand in front of the two Ferraris at the end of that session.
Yeah, I'm obviously happily surprised by that, but you know, being impartial and everything. But I expected Ferrari to be Max Verstappen's main challenger here in China, so I am a little bit surprised that they're down in 6th and 7th. But tomorrow is completely different. We know that Ferrari have made great strides this year on their efficiency on their tyres and looking after their tyres. That for many years was their Achilles heel. They seem to have not cracked it, but got a lot better this year. Whether or not Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri can stay ahead of the Ferraris is a different story.
And that will be the story that you can hear live on BBC Radio 5 Live on Sunday. We'll be on air for the Chinese Grand Prix 7:45 in the morning, ahead of lights out from 8 o'clock in the morning. My thanks to the BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, to the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird. Max Verstappen will start the Chinese Grand Prix from pole position in front of Sergio Perez. We'll have more post-qualifying analysis and also be looking back at the sprint race from this morning in the Checkered Flag podcast, which you can see later in the BBC Sounds and wherever you get your podcast feeds. But for the meantime, we'll see you for the race on air 7:45 on BBC Radio 5 Live. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.